A dream shatters in seconds. The morning of June 15th started like a fairy tale for Natalie Brooks. Sunlight streamed through the windows of the bridal suite at the Grand Harbor Hotel in Boston, casting golden rays across her grandmother's vintage wedding dress. The ivory lace had been preserved perfectly for 3 generations, and today it would finally adorn Natalie as she married Derek Walsh. The man she had loved for 4 years. Natalie stood before the mirror. Her chestnut hair styled in soft waves, her green eyes bright with anticipation. She had built her bakery, Sweet Memories, from nothing. And Derek had been there every step of the way as her business partner and fiancé. Together, they had created something beautiful, both in business and in love. Or so she thought. Her phone buzzed on the vanity table. A text from an unknown number with an attachment. Natalie almost ignored it, but something made her click it open. What she saw made her blood run cold. The message that changed everything. The attachment contained photos and screenshots. Derek with another woman, kissing her at what looked like a business conference last month. Text messages, planning their future together. Bank statement showing transfers from Sweet Memories account to a private account Natalie had never seen before. Email threads discussing how Derek would gain full control of the bakery after the marriage. Natalie's hands shook as she scrolled. It's through message after message. Her vision blurred with tears as she read Derek's words to this other woman, someone named Jennifer from his finance firm. Just a few more hours and the bakery will be legally mine. Natalie's too trusting to have protected herself with a prenup. Once we're married, I can restructure everything. 6 months later, we file for divorce, I keep the business, and we can finally be together without hiding. The phone nearly slipped from Natalie's trembling fingers. For years of building a life together, of trusting him with her dreams, her business, her heart. All of it had been a carefully constructed lie. Running from the nightmare, I looked at herself in the mirror one last time. The beautiful bride staring back at her was a stranger, a fool who had believed in forever with a man who saw her as nothing more than a business opportunity. She couldn't walk down that aisle. She wouldn't give Derek the satisfaction of destroying her life's work without thinking. Natalie grabbed her phone and a small purse, leaving everything else behind. The guests were already seated in the ceremony hall downstairs. She could hear the string quartet playing softly, preparing for her entrance. Instead, Natalie slipped out the side door of the bridal suite, her heels clicking rapidly. Against the marble floor, as she ran toward the service elevator, her mind raced faster than her feet. The bakery was in both their names, but Derek had been handling the financial paperwork for the last year. How much damage had he already done? How many documents had she signed without reading carefully, trusting the man she loved? The betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound. A stranger's kindness, Natalie, burst out of the hotel's side entrance into the bright afternoon sunlight. Traffic hummed along Boylston Street, oblivious to her crumbling world. She stood there in her wedding dress, tears streaming down her face, mascara running in black rivers, completely lost. A sleek black Tesla pulled up to the curb right in front of her. The driver's window rolled down, revealing a man with dark hair, concerned gray eyes, and a strong jawline. He wore an expensive navy suit and an expression of genuine worry. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice deep and gentle. Natalie tried to speak, but only a sob came out. She shook her head, hugging herself as if she could hold the pieces of her heart together. The man glanced at the hotel entrance, where confused guests were starting to emerge, probably searching for the missing bride. He made a quick decision that would change both their lives. "Do you need to get away from here?" he asked simply. Natalie nodded frantically. Without another word, the man unlocked the passenger door. "Get in." The escaped Natalie didn't hesitate. Every instinct told her this stranger was safer than the man waiting for her at the altar. She gathered her dress and climbed into the luxurious car. As soon as she closed the door, the man smoothly pulled into traffic. Driving them away from the hotel and the disaster waiting inside, they drove in silence for several minutes, while Natalie tried to compose herself. She wiped at her tears with shaking hands, smearing makeup across her fingers. The man handed her a box of tissues from the console without saying anything, giving her space to process whatever had just happened. Finally he spoke. "I'm Julian Montgomery. And before you worry, I promise I'm not kidnapping you. I'm just getting you away from whatever you're running from. You can tell me where you want to go, or we can just drive until you figure it out." "Natalie Brooks," she managed to whisper. "And thank you. I know this is crazy, getting into a stranger's car in a wedding dress. I've seen crazier things," Julian said, with a slight smile that somehow made her feel less alone. "Though I admit this is a first for me too." Questions and honesty, they ended up at a small park overlooking the Charles River. Julian parked and turned off the engine, giving Natalie his full attention, but not pressuring her to explain. There was something calming about his presence, a quiet strength that made her feel safe. "My fiancé," Natalie started, then corrected herself. "My ex-fiancé's been using me. He never loved me. He just wanted my bakery. I found proof right before the ceremony." Julian's jaw tightened. "What kind of proof?" Natalie showed him her phone, letting him scroll through the devastating evidence. She watched his expression darken as he read Derek's messages, saw the bank statements, understood the scope of the betrayal. "This is fraud," Julian said firmly, "and I know some excellent lawyers if you need them." "Why are you being so nice to me?" Natalie asked, studying this unexpected guardian angel. "You don't even know me." Julian was quiet for a moment, his gray eyes distant. 3 years ago, I was engaged. My fiancée left me at the altar after her family convinced her I wasn't successful enough. I built my company from nothing, and her family wanted old money, not new success. I know what betrayal feels like, even if the circumstances were different. Nobody deserves to go through that alone. A new beginning. Something in his honesty touched Natalie deeply. Here was a stranger who had stopped his entire day to help her, who understood pain without trying to fix everything immediately, who offered help without expecting anything in return. "I don't know what to do," Natalie admitted. "He has access to everything. My business, my apartment, all of it." "First, we get you somewhere safe," Julian said practically. "Then we call those lawyers I mentioned. And then we make sure Derek Walsh regrets ever thinking he could use you." Natalie looked at Julian Montgomery, really looked at him for the first time. There was determination in his eyes, but also kindness. His hands gripped the steering wheel tightly as if he was personally offended by what Derek had done to her. "Why? Why do you help me like this?" she asked again. Julian met her gaze steadily. "Because someone should have helped me when I needed it. Because you deserve better than what happened to you today. And honestly, because something tells me you're worth fighting for." Those words, from a man who barely knew her, meant more than 4 years of lies from Derek ever had. Natalie felt something shift inside her, a tiny spark of hope in the darkness of her betrayal. "Okay," she said, straightening her shoulders. "Let's fight." Julian smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes and made Natalie's heart skip unexpectedly. He started the car, and they drove away from the park, away from the ruins of her old life, toward something uncertain, but full of possibility. Neither of them knew that this chance meeting would become the greatest love story of their lives. Neither understood yet that sometimes the worst days lead to the best beginnings. But as they drove through Boston together, a broken bride and a kind stranger, the first threads of something beautiful had already begun to weave. Themselves together, the betrayal that had shattered Natalie's world had also freed her to find something real. And Julian, who had built walls around his heart after his own pain, felt them beginning to crack at the sight of this brave woman refusing to let cruelty destroy her. Their story was just beginning. A safe haven 3 days after her escape, Natalie found herself sitting in a modern downtown apartment that Julian had arranged for her. The space was beautiful, its floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Boston Harbor and furniture that spoke of understated elegance. It was temporary, Julian had insisted, just until she sorted out the legal mess with Derek and figured out her next steps. Becca Chen, her best friend and owner of the Daily Grind Cafe, sat beside her on the cream-colored sofa, holding her hand tightly. Becca had been furious when she heard what Derek had done, ready to march over to his office and create a scene. Natalie had barely stopped her. "I still can't believe this Julian guy just helped you out of nowhere," Becca said, shaking her head. "Are you sure he doesn't want something in return?" Natalie had asked herself the same question dozens of times over the past 3 days. But every interaction with Julian had been respectful and kind. He had connected her with his attorney, Patricia Hoffman, who was already building a case against Derek. He had checked in daily, but never overstayed his welcome. He had treated her like a person worthy of help, not a damsel who owed him anything. "I don't think so," Natalie said softly. "He just seems like a genuinely good person." As if summoned by their conversation, Natalie's phone buzzed with a text from Julian. "How are you feeling today? Patricia mentioned she'll have preliminary findings by tomorrow. Also, I have a business proposition, if you're interested. No pressure. Unexpected opportunity." The next morning, Natalie met Julian at his office in the financial district. Montgomery Development Group occupied the 23rd floor of a gleaming skyscraper. As Natalie stepped off the elevator, she was struck by the sophisticated atmosphere mixed with warmth. Plants lined the hallways, and photographs of completed projects adorned the walls, showing community centers, affordable housing developments, and revitalized neighborhoods. Julian greeted her in the reception area, looking professional in a charcoal suit, but with that same kindness in his gray eyes that had made her trust him from the beginning. "Thank you for coming," he said. "I know you have a lot on your mind." He led her to a conference room with a stunning view of the harbor. On the table sat pastries from various Boston bakeries, clearly purchased for their meeting. "I have a confession," Julian started, gesturing to the pastries. "My company hosts a lot of events, client meetings, investor presentations, community celebrations. We've been using different caterers, but nothing has that personal touch that makes people remember the occasion." He paused, meeting her eyes. "I've done my research, Natalie. Sweet Memories had a reputation for creating experiences, not just desserts. Your reviews talk about how each cake tells a story, how your pastries make people feel celebrated." Natalie felt her throat tighten with emotion. She had poured her soul into that bakery, and Derek had tried to steal it all. "I want to offer you a position as our Director of Event Experiences," Julian continued. "You would handle all culinary aspects of our corporate events, but also help design the overall experience. The job pays well, includes benefits, and would give you financial stability while the legal case proceeds. Plus, it would keep you doing what you love." Hesitation and trust. Natalie stared at him, overwhelmed. "Julian, this is incredibly generous, but I can't accept charity." "It's not charity," Julian said firmly. "It's business. I need someone with your talent, and you need a way to rebuild while fighting for what's yours. Besides," he added with a slight smile, "I tried these pastries this morning. None of them come close to the photos I've seen of your work. I'm being selfish, really. I want the best for my company." There was something in his expression, an earnestness, that made Natalie believe he meant every word. She thought about her options. She could wallow in anger and betrayal, or she could take this lifeline and start building something new. "Okay," she said, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. "But I want to prove I deserve this position. Give me one event. If you're not satisfied, I'll step away with no hard feelings." Julian extended his hand. "Deal? And Natalie, you're going to prove yourself right." "I have no doubts." When their hands touched, Natalie felt a spark of electricity that had nothing to do with business. From the way Julian's eyes widened slightly, she suspected he felt it too. They held the handshake a moment longer than necessary before both pulling away. Suddenly aware of the connection forming between them, creating magic together, the first event was an investor luncheon in 2 weeks. Julian gave Natalie a generous budget and complete creative freedom. She threw herself into the work with a passion she thought Derek had killed. Every detail mattered, from the lavender honey cookies that represented new growth to the chocolate torts rich with dark cherries, symbolizing the sweetness that comes after. Difficulty Julian often stopped. By the test kitchen Montgomery Development had allowed her to use, he would taste her creations, offer thoughtful feedback, and share stories about the investors who would attend. Natalie found herself looking forward to these visits, noticing small things about him. The way he rolled up his sleeves when he was concentrating, the laugh lines around his eyes. How he always asked about her day before discussing business. One evening, as they reviewed the menu for the third time, Julian set down his pen and looked at her seriously. "Can I ask you something personal?" Natalie's heart raced. "Sure. How are you really doing?" With everything that happened with Derek, the question caught her off guard. Most people had stopped asking, assuming she was fine because she was working and functioning. But Julian saw deeper. "Some days are harder than others," she admitted. "I trusted him completely. Finding out it was all calculated makes me question my judgment about everything."
Oh.
Julian nodded slowly. "After Amanda left me at the altar, I spent 2 years avoiding any real connection. I threw myself into work, convinced that success would heal the wound, but it didn't. What helped was realizing that her betrayal said everything about her character and nothing about my worth." "Amanda?" Natalie asked softly. Honest confessions. Julian leaned back in his chair, a distant look in his eyes. "Amanda Pierce. We met at a charity gala 5 years ago. She was beautiful, charming, from one of Boston's oldest families. I thought I had found someone who loved me for who I was. Turns out her family had other plans. They wanted her to marry Bradford Huntington. Old money, established name, the whole package. On our wedding day, she left a note saying she couldn't disappoint her family by marrying someone who was still building his fortune." "That's horrible," Natalie breathed. "Julian, I'm so sorry." "The worst part wasn't the public humiliation," Julian continued. "It was realizing she had never actually seen me. She saw a potential status, a project she could mold, but she never saw who I really was." He met Natalie's eyes. "When I saw you outside that hotel, something in your eyes looked familiar. That same shock of realizing someone you loved never really existed." Natalie felt tears prick her eyes. "You do understand." "I do," Julian said gently. "And I want you to know that what Derek did has nothing to do with your worth. Some people are takers, Natalie. They see goodness and want to exploit it rather than cherish it. But that's their failing, not yours." The vulnerability in his words created an intimacy between them that went beyond employer and employee, beyond even friendship. It was the connection of two wounded souls recognizing each other. The event changed everything. The investor luncheon was a stunning success. Natalie had transformed the conference hall into an elegant garden setting, with centerpieces of fresh herbs and edible flowers. Each course told a story of growth and transformation. It's perfectly aligned with Julian's pitch about community development. Sustainable building. The investors were enchanted. They praised not just the food, which was exceptional, but the entire experience. One elderly investor, Mr. George Patterson, pulled Julian aside and said, "In 40 years of business, I've never attended a corporate event that felt this personal. Whoever designed this understands that business is about people, not just profits. That's the kind of vision I want to invest in." Julian found Natalie in the kitchen afterward, directing the cleanup crew. His face was glowing with excitement. "Natalie, you were incredible. Patterson just committed $5 million to the Riverside project. He said your presentation of community and growth through food sealed the deal." Natalie felt pride surge through her. "Really? That's amazing, Julian." Without thinking, Julian pulled her into a hug. Natalie froze for just a second before melting into the embrace. He smelled like cedar and something crisp, like fresh air after rain. When they pulled apart, both were acutely aware of how right it had felt. "I should go check on the crew," Natalie said, her cheeks flushed. "Wait," Julian said, catching her hand. "Have dinner with me." "To celebrate? Just us. No business talk. Please." A date or not a date, they ended up at a small Italian restaurant in the North End. Far from the corporate world they had left behind, over pasta and wine, they talked about everything except work. Natalie learned that Julian had grown up in a working-class neighborhood in South Boston, that his father Henry had been a construction worker who taught him the value of building things that lasted, that his mother had died when he was 15 and he had helped raise his younger sister Catherine. Julian learned that Natalie had started baking with her grandmother Rosa, who had immigrated from Italy and believed every recipe carried memories of the people who had made it before. He learned about her dream of opening a bakery that felt like home, about the scholarships she had won to culinary school, about her fear that Derek had destroyed everything she had built. "He didn't destroy it," Julian said firmly. He tried to steal it, but Patricia says, we have a strong case. The fraudulent transfers, the affair, all of it works in your favor. You're going to get sweet memories back, Natalie. And when you do, it'll be even better, because you'll know exactly who deserves to be part of it. And what if I fail? Natalie whispered, voicing her deepest fear. Julian reached across the table and took her hand. Then you get up and try again. But you won't fail, Natalie. I've seen your work. I've seen your passion. More importantly, I've seen your resilience. You took the worst day of your life and turned it into a new beginning. That's not failure. That's courage. The way he looked at her made Natalie's breath catch. There was admiration in his eyes, but also something deeper, something that made her heart race and her palms sweat. This wasn't just gratitude or friendship anymore. This was attraction, real and undeniable. Amanda's return the next morning. Natalie arrived at the office to find a beautiful blonde woman in the reception area arguing with Julian's assistant. The woman wore a designer dress and an expression of entitled irritation. I don't care if he's in a meeting, the woman was saying. Julian will see me. We have history. Natalie recognized her from the photos Julian had shown her the night before. Amanda Pierce. Julian emerged from his office, his expression hardening when he saw Amanda. What are you doing here? Julian, darling, we need to talk, Amanda said, her voice saccharine sweet. I've made a terrible mistake, and I want to make things right between us. Natalie felt her stomach drop. She tried to slip past toward her office, but Amanda's sharp eyes caught the movement. And who is this? Amanda asked, her tone dismissive. This is Natalie Brooks, our Director of Event Experiences, Julian said coolly. Natalie, this is Amanda Pierce. Amanda's eyes swept over Natalie with barely concealed contempt. Oh, the help. How quaint, Julian. Still picking up strays, I see? That's enough, Julian said, his voice hard. Amanda, you need to leave. But Julian, I came to tell you that I've broken off my engagement with Bradford. I realized you were right all along. We belonged together. Family expectations don't matter when it's real love. Standing strong, Natalie felt sick. This was exactly what she feared. Julian was a millionaire, successful, handsome, kind. Amanda was from his world, understood his life in ways Natalie never could. Why would he choose a baker with a destroyed business over a socialite ready to give him everything? But Julian's response surprised them both. Amanda, what we had wasn't real love. It was you liking the idea of what I could become, and me being foolish enough to think that was the same as being loved for who I am. I'm not interested in revisiting that mistake. Can't be serious, Amanda said, her composure cracking. Is this because of her? She gestured dismissively at Natalie. This is because I've learned to value honesty, Julian said firmly. Something you never gave me. Please leave. If you don't, I'll have security escort you out. Amanda's face flushed with anger and humiliation. She shot Natalie a venomous look before storming toward the elevator. You'll regret this, Julian Montgomery. Both of you will. After she left, silence filled the reception area. Julian turned to Natalie, who was still frozen in place. I'm sorry you had to witness that. Is it true? Natalie asked quietly. She broke off her engagement for you. I don't care if it's true, Julian said, moving closer to her. Natalie Amanda made her choice 3 years ago. She chose status and family approval over me. I'm not interested in being someone's backup plan. But she's from your world, Natalie said, hating how small her voice sounded. She understands your life. Julian took Natalie's hands in his. She understands the world I navigate, but she never understood me. There's a difference. He paused, his gray eyes intense. These past few weeks with you have been the happiest I've been in years. Not because you're grateful or because I'm helping you, but because when I'm with you, I feel seen. Really seen. You ask about my day and actually listen. You challenge my ideas and make them better. You make me laugh. You make me want to be the best version of myself. Natalie felt tears gathering in her eyes. Julian, I'm such a mess right now. My life is complicated. I'm dealing with legal battles. I don't even have my own business anymore. I don't care about any of that, Julian said softly. Natalie, I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm asking if you feel what I feel when we're together. Because if you do, we can figure out the rest. Natalie looked up at him, seeing nothing but sincerity in his expression. Yes, her life was complicated. Yes, she was still healing. But standing here with Julian, feeling his hands warm around hers, she realized something important. Healing didn't mean being alone. Sometimes healing meant letting someone good into your life and trusting that not everyone would hurt you. I feel it, she whispered. I'm terrified, but I feel it. Julian smiled, that beautiful smile that transformed his whole face. Then that's enough. We'll take it slow, we'll be honest with each other, and we'll figure it out together. Okay, Natalie agreed. And when Julian pulled her into his arms, she let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, her worst day had led her to her best chance at happiness. The legal battle intensifies 6 weeks after Natalie's escape from her wedding. Patricia Hoffman sat across from her and Julian in a conference room, her expression grave. Outside, autumn rain streaked down the windows, matching Natalie's mood as she braced herself for bad news. Derek is fighting back harder than expected, Patricia said, spreading documents across the table. He's claiming that you abandoned the business voluntarily, that the wedding cancellation was your emotional breakdown, that he's been holding sweet memories together in your absence. He's filed a counter lawsuit accusing you of defamation and demanding compensation for emotional distress. Natalie felt her stomach twist. But we have proof. The messages, the bank transfers, everything. We do, Patricia agreed. But Derek has gotten clever. He's claiming the messages were taken out of context, that the money transfers were legitimate business expenses you had approved, and that his relationship with Jennifer was something that developed after you left him at the altar? Not before. That's a complete lie, Natalie said, her voice shaking with anger. Julian reached over and took her hand, his touch grounding her. What do we need to do to win this? Patricia looked between them, noting their joined hands with approval. We need more evidence. Witnesses who saw Derek with Jennifer before the wedding. Bank records that prove Natalie didn't authorize those transfers. Anything that establishes a pattern of deception. I'll hire a private investigator, Julian said immediately. Money is no object. We're going to bury Derek in evidence. After Patricia left, Natalie stood at the window, watching the rain. Julian came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. Over the past weeks, they had grown closer in ways that both thrilled and terrified her. Small touches had become natural. They spent most evenings together, sometimes working, often just talking. They hadn't put a label on what they were, but it felt real and right in a way nothing with Derek ever had. I can't let you spend your money on my legal battles, Natalie said softly. You're not letting me do anything, Julian replied, resting his chin on her shoulder. I'm choosing to help because I care about you, because what Derek did was wrong, and I have the resources to make sure justice is served. Let me do this, Natalie, please. She turned in his arms, looking up at his face. Why are you so good to me? Because you're worth it, Julian said simply. And because I'm falling in love with you. The words hung in the air between them, precious and terrifying. Natalie's breath caught. She had felt it too, this growing connection that went beyond gratitude or friendship. But saying it out loud made it real, made it something she could lose. Julian, she whispered. You don't have to say it back, he said quickly. I just needed you to know. No matter what happens with the legal case, no matter what Derek tries to do, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. Natalie reached up and cupped his face with her hands. I'm falling in love with you too. And that terrifies me because the last time I trusted someone completely, he destroyed me. I know, Julian said, covering her hands with his. But Natalie, I'm not Derek. I will never lie to you. I will never use you. And I will spend every day proving that you can trust me with your heart. Then he kissed her, and it was nothing like their first tentative kiss 2 weeks ago. This was deep and passionate, filled with promise and hope. Natalie melted into it, letting herself believe that maybe, just maybe, love didn't have to end in betrayal. Breakthrough evidence 2 weeks later. The private investigator Julian had hired delivered news that changed everything. His name was Thomas Griffin, a retired detective with a reputation for thoroughness. He sat in Julian's office with a thick folder of documents and a satisfied expression. "I've got him," Thomas said, without preamble. "Derek Walsh has been running this same con for years." Natalie leaned forward, her heart pounding. "What do you mean?" Thomas opened the folder. "Before you, there was a woman named Lisa Brennan in Chicago. She owned a catering company. Derek became her business partner, got engaged to her, and tried to take the company in the divorce. Lisa fought back and won, but she signed a non-disclosure agreement as part of the settlement. Before Lisa, there was Rachel Kim in Seattle with a restaurant. Same pattern." "My God," Natalie breathed. "He's done this before." "Multiple times," Thomas confirmed. "He targets successful women with businesses, gains their trust, gets engaged, and then tries to legally steal their companies. I've tracked down both Lisa and Rachel, and they're willing to testify if it helps your case. They want to stop him from doing this to anyone else." Julian stood up, his face hard with anger. "This changes everything. Patricia needs to see this immediately." Within days, Derek's case fell apart. Faced with testimony from 2 previous victims, bank records that proved his pattern of fraud, and evidence of his affair that predated the wedding by months, Derek had no choice but to settle. He would return full control of Sweet Memories to Natalie, pay restitution for the money he had stolen, and face potential criminal charges for fraud the day the settlement was finalized. Natalie stood outside her bakery for the first time in 3 months. Julian stood beside her, holding her hand as she looked at the familiar storefront with its cheerful yellow awning and hand-painted sign. "It's really mine again," she whispered. "It was always yours," Julian said. "Derek just tried to steal it, but you fought back, and you won." Meeting the family that evening, Julian brought Natalie to meet his father. Henry Montgomery lived in the same modest house in South Boston where Julian had grown up. He was a big man with silver hair and kind eyes, weakened by a recent illness but still sharp as ever. "So you're the girl who's made my son smile again?" Henry said, studying Natalie with interest. "Julian hasn't stopped talking about you for months." "Dad," Julian protested, but he was grinning. "Don't you dad me," Henry said. "I know what I've seen. You've been different since you met Natalie. Happier, more like yourself than you've been in years." Natalie felt herself blushing. "Julian has been incredibly kind to me during a difficult time." "Kind?" Henry laughed. "This boy reorganized his entire schedule around your legal case. He talks about your events with more enthusiasm than his own projects." "That's not kind, sweetheart. That's love." Julian took Natalie's hand, no longer embarrassed. "Dad's right. I love you, Natalie. I have for a while now. You've reminded me why I started my business in the first place. To create good things, to help people, to build something meaningful. You make me want to be better." Natalie felt tears welling up, but they were happy tears. "I love you too. You saved me when I needed it most, and you've stood by me through everything. You make me believe in love again." Henry beamed at them. "Well, don't just stand there looking at each other. Kiss the girl, Julian." Julian laughed and pulled Natalie into his arms, kissing her while his father cheered. In that moment, surrounded by genuine love and acceptance, Natalie felt the last pieces of her broken heart heal completely. Derek's final move, but Derek Walsh wasn't finished. 2 days before, Natalie was scheduled to reopen Sweet Memories. He showed up at the bakery with a camera crew from a local news station. Natalie arrived to find him giving an interview on the sidewalk, painting himself as the victim of a vindictive ex-fiancé who had abandoned him and then used her wealthy boyfriend's resources to destroy him. "Natalie Brooks used me," Derek was saying to the reporter, his expression perfectly crafted to show wounded innocence. "I loved her. I helped build her business. And the moment she found a richer man, she threw me away and made up lies about me. This is what happens when gold diggers get lawyers." Natalie felt rage building inside her. Before Julian, who had just arrived, could stop her, she marched up to Derek and the reporter. "Is that camera on?" she asked the reporter. "Yes," the young woman said, looking startled but intrigued. "Good," Natalie said, turning to face the camera directly. My name is Natalie Brooks, and Derek Walsh is a con artist. He has run this same scam on at least 3 women that we know of. He targets successful women, gains their trust, gets engaged, and then tries to steal their businesses. I have bank records, witness testimony, and 2 other victims willing to go on record. The only reason I'm standing here today is because I had the resources to fight back, but how many other women didn't? How many other women did Derek destroy before someone finally stopped him? Derek's face went pale. That's defamation. You can't prove any of that. Actually, she can, came a new voice. Patricia Hoffman stepped forward with a folder of documents. And if you don't leave immediately, Mr. Walsh, I'll add harassment to the criminal charges we're already preparing, the reporter, sensing a much bigger story than she had expected, started asking Derek pointed questions. He fled, his perfect victim act crumbling. The news story that aired that evening told the truth about Derek's pattern of fraud, effectively destroying any sympathy he might have garnered. A new chapter 6 months later. Sweet Memories was thriving again, better than ever. Natalie had reopened with a new business model, combining the bakery with a culinary education program for young women from disadvantaged backgrounds. Julian had helped fund the expansion. But it was Natalie's vision that made it special. She still worked with Montgomery Development Group, creating memorable experiences for their events. The partnership between her company and Julian's had become one of the most talked about collaborations in Boston's business community. But the best part of Natalie's new life was the man waiting for her. When she locked up the bakery each evening, Julian had proposed 3 months ago, not with a splashy public gesture, but with a quiet moment in the test kitchen where they had first started falling in love. The ring was simple and beautiful, designed by a local artist, and when Natalie had said yes, she had meant it with her whole heart. Their wedding was scheduled for the spring, a small ceremony in the garden behind Henry's house. No grand hotel, no 200 guests, just family and close friends celebrating something real. One evening, as they walked hand in hand along the harbor, Natalie stopped and looked up at Julian. "Do you ever think about that day? When I jumped into your car in a wedding dress?" "Every day," Julian said, pulling her close. "It was the best wrong turn I ever took." "I was running away from a nightmare," Natalie said softly. "I had no idea I was running toward my dream." "We both were," Julian replied. "I spent 3 years closed off after Amanda, convinced I was better off alone. Then you crashed into my life and reminded me what it felt like to hope, to trust, to love." Natalie reached up and kissed him, still amazed that this was her life now. She had been betrayed in the worst way possible, had lost everything she thought to find her. But in losing everything, she had found something infinitely better. She had found herself again, stronger and more resilient. She had found her purpose in helping others avoid what she had experienced. And she had found love, real love, with a man who saw her worth and cherished it. "Thank you," she whispered against his lips. "For what?" "For stopping that day. For helping a stranger. For being exactly who you are." Julian smiled, that beautiful smile that still made her heart skip. "Thank you for trusting me. For taking a chance on love again. For being brave enough to start over." As the sun set over Boston Harbor, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Natalie Brooks realized something profound. Sometimes the worst betrayals lead to the greatest blessings. Sometimes losing everything means gaining what truly matters. And sometimes love finds you in the most unexpected places, offering comfort and hope when you need it most. Her story had started with betrayal, but it would end with triumph. Not because a millionaire had rescued her, but because she had saved herself. Julian had just been there to remind her of her own strength, to stand beside her while she rebuilt, and to offer her a love that was honest, kind, and true as they walked home together. Already planning their future, Natalie knew with absolute certainty that she had found something Derek could never have given her. She had found a partner who celebrated her success instead of trying to steal it. She had found a love built on respect and honesty instead of manipulation. She had found her happy ending, not despite the betrayal, but in a strange way. Because of it, sometimes the wrong person leads you to the right one. And sometimes Comfort comes from the last place you imagined, in the arms of a stranger who becomes your everything.